Okay, now on Inputables. Um, so Inputables, registration works relatively the same, except, well, there's a lot different. So same procedure. You submit to register, except you have to pass the key that you're registering to and the event that you're registering that key to. So right here, I'm registering to when the space key is pressed. That's when I want key press to be called in my ship. Um, so actually looking into the inputable. So like I said, it's like the others, but it's different. So instead of just storing one delete reference, one deregistration, and basically one of everything here: registration, deregistration, registration state, and delete reference. A single object can be registered to countless different key events. So I have to manage. I can't just have one for everything. I have to, well, one for the object. I have to have one for each scenario. Um, so I'm storing all of that inside of registration data. All of my, yeah, all of my registration data, hence the name. And then I'm connecting each one with the key event being the pair uh, of the actual key and the uh, event. So each key event pair has its own registration data. Um, so then jumping into inputable. So in submit registration, when submit registration is called, it creates a new registration pair, essentially. Um, creates its own registration command, deregistration command, passes its event and key to the command. But yeah, um, yeah, and then just like the other upples, it just uses submit scene command to submit a registration command to scene, the scene brokers, the scenes command broker, just like the other upples. Um, so then when that gets processed, what then happens is the game object is the inputable is then registered to the it it's a little different than inputable and updatable and drawable. So it registers itself to the inputable manager. It passes its key and its key event type because the inputable manager, or keyboard manager as I call it, um, it doesn't just store single um, key events, key commands. But basically, what I'm trying to say is the keyboard manager stores single key managers. So So this gets passed to this, which will then in turn, so in register, within this register, it will then create a single key manager, which will be responsible for uh, watching just the key that's passed in, no more, no less, with the given event, for the given event. So let me pull up Keyboard Manager. So, Keyboard Manager register, I check to see if I already have a single key manager that matches these criteria. See if that exists within my keyboard manager. If it doesn't, then I create a new single key manager for that given key. And then I just store my new inputable inside of that single key manager. Object register. Okay. And then in single key manager, so actually in keyboard manager. So when scene calls process elements in input manager, that will call keyboard manager's process elements, which will then call process elements on its stored list of single key managers. And this is what actually calls key pressed or key released on the registered items. So I'll pull up the header file real quick. So yeah, it stores a list of events registered for released, list of objects registered to pressed, and yeah. And then in the actual single key manager, so in process elements, this is where I actually call key pressed on the given input, on the registered inputables. So yeah, first I'm checking to see if the key, that looks like, yeah, that if the key is pressed, yes. And then afterwards, I'm checking to see if the key wasn't pressed. So essentially switching off between those two. So yeah, this is registration. So this is actually registering the inputable object to the single key manager. So that's what's happening. Where is it? Here. This is where it's happening. So when that happens, it calls register on the single key to register the inputable to the for the given key. There. And that's where it's actually registered to the single key manager and given its delete reference. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, when single key, when process elements is called on single key, then calls key pressed, and then say like in here, since I'm registering to be an inputable, specifically for the unpressed event, down in my key pressed event, this is where this will be called. So yeah, that's registration and actually calling the method. Deregistration, it's similar to some extent. So like always, you submit to deregister yourself. Um, you're then accessing the let's jump back into inputable. So since you're storing your registration data inside of a map, you use this key and event pair to access your actual registration data, and send your and that will allow you that allows one to access the deregistration command, and then send that to the scenes command broker. Um, where's inputable CPP? Yeah, there. So yeah, given these two parameters, you can get your registration data. Get your key, get your command past that, um, and then once the command is processed, it calls deregister. Deregister, it gets the given registration data again, and then it accesses the delete reference that is given to the inputable when it registers. Here, nope. Register, yeah. The delete reference when it registers there. And then it deregisters this inputable from the single key manager. So yeah, it's right here. So that's basically inputable.